I don't know how many of you know the story of Francis. We, as Felician Franciscans, know a lot about his life. I was blessed with the opportunity years ago to visit Assisi and to travel to various spots where Francis prayed, where he met many of the lepers in the colony, where he walked through the streets barefoot. Well, for Francis, he was the son of a merchant. He had everything in life that he wanted, everything in life that he needed. But God took him off the path of need and want, and he was ill. And in his time, just like Ignatius, Jesus spoke to him. Francis learned who Jesus was from the scriptures, and he chose to live a life of poverty, the poverty of Jesus. Well, how did it come about that this happened? Well, he took off his clothes in the mid-square. People gazed at him and watched. What was he doing? But the grace of God was so active in his life and inviting him to really follow Jesus. And he put on a tunic, a brown tunic. He left his father, he left his home, and he left his riches. But it wasn't enough, because Jesus was speaking to him as he walked through the streets. But he needed more. He wanted a relationship with Jesus that was deep, that was loving. And he found a cave. And each day he would go and he would pray in silence, in quiet, as Jesus spoke to his heart. And he listened. He listened deeply to where he was invited to go. And he called others to follow him. And they too took their tunic and they walked the streets with him. But still it wasn't not enough. Because when we follow Jesus, he always asks for more. And this time, he asked Francis for something very difficult. Francis knew from the life of Jesus that he loved the poor, and he went to people who were marginalized and broken, abandoned and forgotten. And Francis became friends with these people. And he would meet them and greet them and say, "Peace be with you." But the challenge came one day when he met a leper. He looked at the leper and ran away. He wasn't going to embrace someone who was dirty, smelly, abandoned, living in a colony with other lepers. No, this was not something he wanted to do. But the pull of Jesus was so great that he went back. And he almost saw the image of Jesus healing a leper, embracing him. And Francis went back to the leper. He smiled at him, he embraced him, and kissed him. And it says in the omnibus of Francis that when he did that, he saw the face of Jesus. He looked into the eyes, and he smiled. The journey of Francis went on, and Jesus continued to build a relationship very deeply with him. Francis walked for days, miles, to visit the Holy Father, to ask that the rule of Francis would be accepted for his followers. And he was challenged, he was rejected, and he was laughed at. But he never lost hope. His life was centered on Jesus, and Scripture became real. I tell you this story because the leper in our lives is so very important. Francis, our Pope, Pope Francis tells us we are challenged as the church, and we will not follow or find the Lord unless we truly accept the poor and marginalized as Francis. Pope Francis prayed that we remember the example of St. Francis of Assisi, who was unafraid to embrace the leper and to accept every kind of outcast. Pope Francis spoke to the cardinals about Francis, and he urged the cardinals to serve Jesus crucified in every person who is marginalized. Francis received the stigmata, the wounds of Jesus crucified, the example for us as church, as followers of Jesus, to see the Lord in every person, to see the Lord in every excluded person who's hungry, thirsty, naked, to see the Lord present in those who have lost their faith or turned away from the practice of their faith, to see the Lord in the imprisoned, the sick, the unemployed and persecuted, to see the Lord in the leper of society today. Francis, Pope Francis, and all of us are invited to follow the crucified Jesus, to embrace the leper, to find time for silence and solitude in the cave that we find ourselves, whether it be a small room, whether it be the church, whether it be driving in the car, but to experience Jesus in the cave. I'd like to say that at Response to Love Center, we sisters, our staff and volunteers, we're in a poverty-stricken neighborhood of Buffalo, and we meet the lepers every day. We feed them, we clothe them, we meet the forgotten, the lost and abandoned, the loved and the unloved. And we see that Scripture becomes alive from the pages into our hearts and our relationships with others. And the gospel waits for us, waits for our response. And yet, the leper himself or herself awaits us. We're in a mini Calcutta here, just as Francis was in his Assisi. And we follow that example of Jesus as best as we can, tired as we are, broken and weak as we are. But we find strength. We find strength in our prayer life, our relationship with Jesus, and we invite others to be embraced with the love, the compassion, and the accompaniment, calling to mind the passage from Francis, to embrace the leper, to embrace what our Holy Father says in his message, to love the leper. Today, we invite all of you to join us in our journey, to embrace the marginalized, whether it be in the neighborhood, whether it be in your own family, whether it be a stranger you meet along the way. Embrace that leper, that person with love, with hope and acceptance, because Jesus sends these people to us when we are open and welcoming. Well, the leper awaits us, but the choice is ours. What will be our response?